Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, ready to give you another example of how Mafia works, because this week I'm reviewing the 2020 remake of the 2010 crime-action-adventure game Mafia II. The original was developed by 2K Czech, who barely worked on anything unrelated to Mafia before being merged into studio Hangar 13, while the remaster was developed by D3T, a studio that makes no works of their own but collaborates with other companies and makes ports and remasters, including one we'll be talking about in a few weeks. Ooh. With the first game ending with protagonist Tommy Angelo coming down with a bad case of, dead, the stage was set for a new anti-hero to take the center stage, and in walked Vito Scaletta. Will his story end more positively, or will Vito's life be another death note in the history of mob activity? Let me light the way in, 80 minutes or less, I hope, as we give it everything we've got! The game begins with Vito recounting his childhood when his father moved them from Sicily to America, more specifically Empire Bay. Once again, I should not have to say what famous American city Empire Bay is based on. New York! Vito talks about how poorly his father managed money and how it led to Vito committing crimes with his equally familiar-looking best friend Joe Barbaro, who he met at school. Our Sicilian swiper gets caught during a theft and, to avoid jail time, agrees to fight in World War II as a part of the forces invading Sicily. The invasion of Sicily was actually a big turning point in the war. Thanks to a number of deception operations, the Allies were able to divert Axis forces away from Sicily, making it easier to invade. With Sicily under their control, the Allies were able to invade Italy and topple Benito Mussolini. However, Vito isn't feeling very successful, as he and two other men have been trapped behind enemy lines. They successfully infiltrate a town hall and rescue the innocent civilians before being targeted by an actual tank. Luckily, the head of the Sicilian mob, Don Callo, gets the Italian soldiers to stand down right before they can don Capo Vito. A while later, Soldier Scaletta is sent home for a month on injury leave where he immediately reunites with Joe Barbaro, who hooks Vito up with some counterfeit discharge papers, making his return permanent. Which is good, otherwise this would have been Army 1 instead of Mafia 2. Since Vito is a family guy about 50 years before it was kinda funny but mostly overplayed and dated jokes, his next step is to check in on his mother and his sister Francesca, his father having died shortly before he was shipped out. The next day, Mother Scaletta tells Vito to seek out employment opportunities with Derek Papalardo down at the docks. On his way to do so, he finds someone dressed suspiciously like the tyrant from Resident Evil 2 harassing Francesca. After taking him down with similar jank button spamming, she informs her older brother that the world's greatest dad took out a loan from a loan shark shortly before his death that he was unable to pay back, now putting the family $2,000 in debt. For those wondering, a $2,000 debt in 1945 would be $32,000 worth of debt today.
Help me! Help me!
Having only 1 week to amass the large mass of money before the price increases en masse, Vito says screw the port job and pays a visit to Joe, hoping to use his mob ties to get some fast money without having to go on Family Feud, seeing as how that wouldn't exist for another 30 years. Before Joe can help with that, he has to take Vito to get his fancy schmancy fake discharge papers, and we're treated to just the best driving simulator, now with new ice physics. Don't worry, I'll still be cutting out all the meaningless driving and the constant risk of eardrum shattering audio glitches that come with it. After paying for the papers, Vito is introduced to a mechanic you will use a lot, and one you will almost never use. He purchases a lockpick set which can be used to steal cars and other things, which you will do quite a bit of, and also how to pay to get the license plates changed and car upgraded, which you will almost never do. The next stop is to look for jobs from Mike Brewski at his junkyard, and on the ride there, Joe shares some pickup lines that, were probably good at the time.
Hey, is that a mirror in your pocket? Cause I could see myself in your pants.
Still has more conversational abilities than a certain other Joe. At the junkyard, Vito secures a job from Eddie to bring him a certain type of car from the city. The one he finds happens to belong to a gang known as the Bombers, but Vito can just swerve out of there and avoid any conflict. With $300 under his belt and only $1,700 left to go, he decides to call it a night. I mean, if I only had about 7 days to accumulate $32,000, I definitely would not end the first day with only $300 in my pocket. About $295 of that would have to go toward gas alone. Vito, now staying at Joe's place, gets a call from his mom the next day asking if he visited Derek Papalardo yet. He lies and says he did, though to his credit he does go and immediately visit the man, being given the lauded job of picking things up and putting them down. Realizing he could either keep lifting crates for $10 or get another job from Joe for roughly 30 times that, he pulls a Sasha Banks and Naomi and just walks out. However, mentioning that he works with Joe catches the ear of this man named Steve, who brings him back to Derek to get some real work. After confirming the relationship to Joe, Derek tasks Vito with collecting the dock workers' payments to the barber. I mean, you'd want to pay this guy on time, right? Some of the workers pay without problem, while others say, "That doesn't work for me, brother," and in the immortal words of the guy just doing it for the achievement,
"You mess with the spaghetti, you get the sauce."
Getting $50 for his work and a little bonus for taking care of Big Boy Bill, Vito is informed that Joe wants to meet him at Freddy's. Ah, what? But our return there isn't scheduled until 2023! Meeting in what has to be one of the earliest Freddy's locations, Joe introduces Vito to Henry Tomasino, a made man in the Clemente crime family. He wants Vito to break into the Office of Price Administration and steal gas stamps. Gas stamps were used during World War II to ration gas to people depending on their job. The more essential your job was to the war, the more stamps you got. And I hope that remains a history lesson and not an explanation of the newest price controlling method. He gets infiltration instructions from Henry's inside woman, Maria Agnello, as he drives her to the hospital across from the OPA. Vito is neither Batman nor one of his parents like Tommy. He's a lot more chill than that, so stealth isn't very easy for him, but it's necessary while sneaking through the office and avoiding all the guards. All that runaround amounts to jack shit though, as the alarm goes off after Vito unlocks the safe. He has to run and gun his way back to the safety of Freddy's, but the night isn't over for him yet as Henry figures out that the gas stamps expire tomorrow, so Vito has to redeem every last one of them at 6 of the gas stations across the city before midnight. And yes, you are timed.
Saved.
Since Vito has experienced severe anxiety, he is entitled to financial compensation in the form of keeping some of the money from the sales. He then meets up with Henry again the next day to discuss the next job, breaking into the jewelry store of someone who owes Henry's boss money. Given that the name of this chapter is Murphy's Law, I see this going exceptionally well. Oh look, it's going wrong!
Totally in a state of shock.
Thanks to the much less stealthy entrance of the Irish mob, the cops are now on the scene, and they want to boil the spaghetti, if you know what I mean. Like his Pappardelle predecessor, Vito escapes the cops by scurrying across the rooftops, though instead of a church, he finds his safe haven in an alleyway. To each their own. Speaking of Tommy, if you own a copy of the first Mafia, Vito will be able to wear Tommy's classic pinstripe suit. Vito was going retro before it was cool. He may act like Tommy and look like Tommy, but does he protect women like Tommy?
And who the fuck are you?
Somebody who doesn't like hearing you talk to a lady like that.
Yes. Yes, he does. I bet Tommy and Vito would get along. Chug a few beers, shoot the shit. It would be a blast. I'd kill to see that. Back on track, Vito once again meets up with Henry to discuss the robbery, though they are now joined by the man they did it for, Luca Guarino. Luca introduces the boys to their next job before Luca's boss comes in to smack a bitch up like Tyrion did to Joffrey too few times and pulls him aside on urgent business. Henry elaborates on the job, saying they are to stake out and take out a, and I quote, fat fuck. In order to do so, Vito has to pick up an MG42? As is the nature of video games, everything that should be accomplished in 1 or 2 steps has to happen in 5 to 6, so they fail to kill the target from their stakeout point and instead have to chase him through multiple floors of a distillery. They summon the spirit of the Mountie and get their man, but not before he puts a bullet in Henry's leg. With Henry's life being in Henry danger, he demands Vito drive him to mob doctor El Greco, and while Henry and Joe spend some quality time with the good doctor, Vito summons the spirit of his Lannister ancestors and pays his debts, giving Francesca the $2,000. And then he goes home to spend some quality time with the police, who arrest him for selling illegal gas stamps.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Put this in the very small pile of games with a somewhat competent police force. Not even wannabe Saul Goodman can make this all good, man, as Vito gets sentenced to 10 years in prison. Roll credits? No, wait, I jumped the gun. Vito, firmly in his Arrow Season 7 arc, meets a man named Leo Galante, no relation to AJ, who agrees to protect Vito as long as he participates in his not quite legal prison boxing promotion. maybe this is less Arrow Season 7 and more Riverdale Season 3. I don't know which one's worse. After winning some fights and getting a visit from Francesca, who tells Vito she's getting married and that their mom is sick, he gets to do the glorious job of cleaning toilets.
Now you're gonna go join the rest of the animals in the showers.
No, I don't wanna.
Would you kindly?
Okay. Some men try to jump Vito in the showers, not like that, and he gets caught after he fends them off, because I dare you to find me one story where the hero isn't treated unfairly at least once. To make matters worse, he receives a letter that his mother died while Francesca was visiting him, so all of his money has gone toward her funeral. Speaking of funerals, this Irishman's gonna need one. For taking him out on Leo's behest, Vito gets moved to his Dale the Whale-esque cell, where he learns about the 3 houses of Empire Bay: the Black Eagles, the Blue Lions, and the Golden Deer. Wait, wrong game. It's the Clemente family, the Falcone family, and the Vinci family, the latter of which Leo is a consigliere of. Together, the 3 families form the Commission, which established a series of rules they all have to follow, which is as smart an idea as creating a democratic society of nothing but pirates.
You cheated. Pirate.
Leo follows through on his promise to cut Vito's sentence and manages to get him out 4 years early. Now, Vito is thrown into the deep end of the pool that was the Americana of post-World War II 1950s. This starts with Joe bringing him to his fancy new apartment, complete with a free telephone, and then meeting Joe's new friend, Eddie Scarpa, underboss of the Falcone family. There's a very extended sequence of nothing happening, with the only important development being Vito agreeing to join Joe in assisting the Falcones. Oh, also they have to bury some dead guy in Eddie's truck. Next on the seemingly never-ending list of menial tasks that Vito must complete for money is going around Empire Bay and selling cigarettes. Well, Joe does the sales, you just hear the order twice and then press a button in front of the matching crate because gameplay. Eventually, the cast of Grease fires on their supply and Eddie isn't too happy about this, demanding that the two of them get back the $2,000 he spent on the supply and to teach the Greasers a lesson by demolishing their bar with help from Steve, Derek Papalardo's assistant. After fighting fire with fire, they all head off to the Greasers' home base at the old foundry, leading to one of the most out-of-place references I've ever heard.
Hey, how'd you get in here?
Followed the fucking yellow brick road.
So anyway, they start blasting their way through all the Greasers in the foundry until, like the chicken, they make it to the other side. There's no great and powerful Kevin Nash at the end of this brick road though, just cars that Vito and Joe sell to get the $2,000 back to Eddie. Having proven himself through all that, Vito is finally introduced to the very Richard Nixon looking Don Carlo Falcone. Tricky Don has a job for Vito because this is a game entirely comprised of odd jobs. 3 of Falcone's men have gone missing and he suspects Vito's old colleagues Luca Guarino and Don Alberto Clemente. In order to find the missing men, Vito is to tail Luca, and as anyone who's ever played LA Noire can tell you, tailing missions are always just the best. Luca eventually and inadvertently brings Vito to the Clemente slaughterhouse, and he sneaks inside via the sewers. I've already made plenty of jokes about video games and sewers, and frankly, all of them belong down here too. Honestly, this whole section just combines the impatient gamer's 2 forms of kryptonite: tailing missions and forced stealth missions, as Vito has to navigate through the whole slaughterhouse without being spotted or heard. Through patience, or trial and error, he makes it in time to save 2 of the boys, but Luca escapes in the ensuing fight, and Vito must fight through all the people he just snuck past. But at least he isn't alone in this endeavor. Luca uses his one phone call to summon more meatbag targets that just delay his demise, and Vito returns to Eddie while the 2 men, named Balls and Beans because funny, have some fun with their new captive. Well, first Eddie makes Vito go out and change his clothes, marking the most realistic post-sewer escapade in any video game. After that, Vito and Joe become official made men of the Falcone family after a brief reunion with Leo Galante. Galante's boss, Don Frank Vinci, actually attends this made man meeting where he lays out a very familiar rule.
Whatever you do, gentlemen, stay away from the dope. No dope. That's our policy.
As our previous experience showed us, you can always trust a mobster to follow their own rules. We get a quick montage of Joe and Vito living the good life as made men, including new cars, new clothes, and new casas, and then the next domino falls. As a result of Clemente attacking Falcone's men, Falcone can get any manner of retribution against Clemente and be supported by the Commission. His plan is to blow up a room in a hotel. Wait a minute. Vito and Joe dress up like hotel cleaning crew to sneak through and place the bomb, while Joe's apprentice, Marty, waits in the car to be their getaway driver. Contrary to how everything else in this game has gone, they actually place the bomb with no problem, though problems do arise immediately afterwards when their rooftop escape is interrupted by Clemente men.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
They use the window washing platform to lower down to the conference room and finish setting up the bomb, though it ends up going off a bit earlier than they expected. When they slide back down to survey the damage, they discover that Clemente is actually the ultimate lucky boss, as he happened to be making boom boom when the room went boom boom. Exactly like the previous mission, the infiltration was a success, but the extraction is explosive. They fight their way back to the parking lot where Marty is waiting for them, though he's a lot more dead than you'd like for a getaway driver. They make do without him and escape, racing down Clemente and putting an end to him once and for all, though the victory is Pyrrhic as Joe is taking Marty's death hard. That night, Vito gets a call from a man named Leon, seemingly taking a break from baseball to be a black man running a bar that Joe is currently refusing to leave. Well, hey, maybe Leon won't die this way.
Never should have happened!
Oh, Jesus!
Ah, shit.
You gotta be kidding me.
Guess I jumped the gun on that one. Vito stuffs the body in the bartender's own car and destroys it after bringing Joe home safe. The next morning, Vito is awoken by a visit from Henry, the first guy he and Joe worked with after his return from the war. With Clemente dead, Henry is afraid Falcone is going to take out the rest of the family, and Vito agrees to put in a good word with Eddie to try to get him brought in. This ends up backfiring though, as Henry's initiation is to strike against Don Vinci before he can strike against the Falcone family, and to do so he must assassinate Leo Galante, which doesn't sit well with Vito, so he decides to rush to Galante's place first and get him out of the city safely. Which is much easier said than done because this mission is fucking broken. The timer is very strict and you have to hope you get lucky with the randomly generated cars and get one fast enough to get you to Leo. Then you have to make sure you take the best route, don't miss turns or hit cars, and manage to get through the gate and up to the house without running out of time or a chunk of earth disappearing. It's like a hyper extreme of the requiring perfection without preparation missions from the first game. If you manage to overcome the game's best effort to make you stop playing it, you will then have to escape Henry's sights. There are a few places you can hide, one that ends in death, and others that all lead to the same conversation about how Falcone is selling drugs, because of course, and had Clemente killed to have the business to himself. Henry decides to repay Vito's favor by sparing Leo as long as Leo disappears from the city. Of course, you can escape the house without Henry seeing you and get Leo out of the city anyway if you want to. With Leo safe, Vito returns home to see Francesca sitting on his steps in, let me check, her last appearance in the game. Vito and Tommy sure do have a lot in common, eh? Francesca says her husband does nothing but drink and party, so Vito drives to him and resolves the situation with the deserved level of diplomacy. And how is Vito rewarded for this?
Look, you stay away from us, you understand? Just stay away!
The fuck?
Well, it could have been worse.
You dago cunt! Barn!
Alright. Vito escapes to Joe's apartment and they create a quick revenge plan as Joe explains that the Irish mob has come under new management, and this new manager wants Vito dead for killing his cousin in prison. Their revenge plan should come as no surprise, given how it's already happened in this series like 5 times. Step 1, go to enemy bar. Step 2,
Alakablam!
at the end you are supposed to chase after the remaining Irishmen in a car, but if you're quick enough on the draw, you can just blow them up before they go anywhere. They fly from the firefight as a result of a fire blight that left Vito's wallet extra light, which is cause for a fright, but Joe has more ideas to make things right, which should be a cause for delight, but Vito's new apartment is quite trite. Alright, I'm done with that. It's time to call it a night. The next morning, our hero and his trusty sidekick meet up with Henry in the park, where he lays out their entry into the drug business. They're going to act as middlemen for a Chinese triad in the city, moving their supply to the drug dealers themselves. However, they have to procure $35,000 to buy the drugs off of them, and they're going to get that money from a loan shark named Bruno. I'm sure plenty of people in Empire Bay don't like to talk about him either. They get the 35 grand from Bruno by promising him 55 grand at the end of the week, and exchange the money for the good stuff before being immediately stopped by a large group of men pretending to be cops, leading to a massive shootout as the American triad tries to escape. The escape is successful, and we get another montage. this time of the three of them selling the drugs around the city. Remember in the last game when the mobsters did a job behind their boss's back? How did that end again? Oh. Yeah. Well, this game has already repeated so many events from the first game. Surely something like that won't ever happen again.
Carlo knows about the deal.
Carlo is demanding $60,000, which won't leave them with enough to pay Bruno back. They go to meet Henry in the park, but in doing so, they interrupt his aggressive negotiations with the Triad. With Henry dead and now all the money gone, Vito and Joe are firmly up shit creek, and their plan to get themselves a paddle is to storm the Triad's base of operations and get the money back. This leads to a shootout with international flavor as they storm their way through a Chinese restaurant working as a front for a drug lab, descending to the lowest level to confront Mr. Wong, who tells them that Henry was killed because he was a government informant and that the money is already gone. So that plan was a bust, and now things are even worse. They don't have the money that both Bruno and Carlo want, the person Vito himself vouched for was a rat, and the surviving members of the Triad could see Vito and Joe's restaurant rampage as an act of war and retaliate. With only one day left to get Bruno's money, the race against time firmly begins with a job from Eddie. A simple one where all they have to do is drive up to some dude's house and kill him. I swear I've seen that exact car somewhere before. As Vito drives to the given address, Joe explains that this job is a favor for another family in another city, and that they are to give him a specific message before making him pay for selling the family out to the FBI. Wait...
Mr. Angelo?
Yes?
Mr. Salieri sends his regards.
I knew I had seen them before! This whole time we've been following the story of Tommy Angelo's killers. Fun fact, the definitive edition of Mafia actually changed the design of the killers to match Vito and Joe, but the same can't be said in this game because that definitely isn't what Tommy looked like at the end of the first game. But there's no time to dwell on this amazing plot twist as the cops are on their asses. Their work isn't done after they escape though, as they still have a lot of money to make up for. So Vito heads back to Derek Papalardo to get more work, which comes in the form of intimidating his employees into getting back to work. But negotiations take a turn when the workers realize who Vito is, revealing to him that Derek is responsible for his father's death. Just like the man he murdered, money takes second place to Vito's absentee family, so he works with the dock workers to fight his way across the docks and send Derek and Steve to reunite with Vito's dad. And, as a little treat for himself, he steals all of Derek's money. Nice. Vito tries to check in with Joe but can't find him. Meeting with Eddie proves fruitless in that aspect, though it does reveal that neither Carlo nor Eddie know that Vito and Joe were in on Henry's drug deal or that they were the ones who shot up the restaurant. So they're in the clear on that front for now. More searching leads Vito to discover that Joe is taken by some of Vinci's men for questioning, as Vinci is trying to prove Joe is behind the tensions created between the Triad and the two families in the commission, and Vito gets himself captured to find him. Luckily, this seasoned Don of a crime family doesn't know Interrogation 101 and puts Vito and Joe next to each other, and they capitalize on their opportunity to work together and escape the construction site they're in. After this very extended gunfight, Vito drives Joe to El Greco and takes both of their profits to Bruno, paying back the loan and learning that Bruno is the same exact loan shark he had to help his mom and Francesca with at the beginning of the story. Remember that, when things were simple? With Vito out from down under, he gets a very important phone call. Who could it be now?
Yeah, Carlo wants to see you over at the planetarium.
Did he say what it was about?
No, better head over there now, though. Don't want to keep the man waiting. Yeah, see you, Vito.
Yeah, that's not ominous in the slightest. On his way to the observatory, which he apparently decided to walk to because the plot needed him to, he gets stopped and politely forced to enter a car containing the returning Leo Galante and Mr. Chu, head of Empire Bay's Chinese gang. Leo explains that Henry really was a rat for the FBI, and now they're going after Falcone. Both the Triad and the Commission want Vito dead for starting the war between the two of them, and Falcone knows that Vito vouched for a rat, so he's most likely being summoned to die. However, Leo repays Vito's kindness from earlier by pulling some strings and providing him with an out. All he has to do is kill Don Carlo Falcone and all will be forgiven. Just like before, the final gunfight is long, annoying, unforgiving with autosaves if you die, and takes you through a very large building. Eventually, there's a break from the pain as Vito confronts Falcone.
But your buddy Joe understands, don't you, Joe?
What the fuck is this?
I could ask you the same question.
Loyalty's a fun...
You gonna pull that trigger? Do it already.
What are you waiting for?
Vito, let's shoot this cocksucker.
Remember what we talked
On
about,
tree.
Joe?
I see what you did there. Nice flip of the plot twist from the first game. The two best friends work together to finally put Carlo Falcone down. They exit to see a gathering of Vinci men and are separated into two cars on their way to celebrate. However, Joe's car takes a different turn and Leo informs Vito that Joe wasn't part of the deal, and the game just ends like that. So the moral of the story in these games is just don't have friends. Either they betray you and you have to kill them, or stay loyal to you and get killed by someone else. That's the most depressing message since Persona 3 reminded all of us that death is inevitable and inescapable. But hey, the protagonist survived this time. The whole time I was playing this, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just playing a carbon copy of the previous game that was somehow worse. Not only are there a lot of repeated story beats, but all of the flaws of the father are even stronger here, like the games were made in reverse. Vito's family is even less present than Tommy's, given that one dies off screen after about 5 lines of dialogue and the other makes a handful of appearances at the beginning and then one toward the end. It's a bit more forgivable since this game doesn't have a family-centered message, but given that the revelations of who Vito's father was in debt to and who killed him were treated like big moments, it still stands out. What also stands out is the total lack of any feeling of progression or climbing the ranks. Like the first game, you do technically rise up in the family, but it never manifests in any meaningful way in the gameplay, so you hardly notice a difference. At least in the first game, they had you collecting payments and driving cars at first before you took out targets and got into deeper jobs. Mafia II is just a series of odd jobs until the game decides it's time to wrap things up. One issue from before that this game actually doesn't have is that you don't just work with the same 2 people the whole time. Sure, Joe is around until the end, but you also work with guys like Henry, Luca, Leo, Eddie, and the Dons to add a bit of variety. What really sucks about this game's lackluster and repetitive story and gameplay is that it almost completely buries the great plot twist of Vito being the one who killed Tommy. It's less of a plot twist now that the character models and subtitles lay it all out for you, but it's so brief that most people probably won't notice. And those jokes I made about Vito being vaguely familiar weren't actually jokes when I was playing. I kept trying to figure out where I saw him before, and it clicked right as they began their drive to Tommy's house. Overall, Mafia II Definitive Edition feels like a slightly new coat of paint poured over the first game and passed off as a wholly new experience. Despite that, there's a solid level of mobster fun and exciting moments that try to carry you through what is mostly a lackluster package. 5 out of 10. There's only one more review before the big halfway point, and as the rule of 3 state, our gang time isn't over just yet, so get ready for masquerade masks and vicious voodoo because we're NOLA bound. I hope to see you there.
Continue.